I had completely lost the ability to keep up with the rapid-fire, non-stop releases of new Steven Universe episodes during the Summer of Steven event, especially since I've recently moved to a different state and have had to deal with a bunch of issues related to relocating. Thus, I'll be handling reviewing the many episodes I'm backlogged on by making condensed mini-reviews of the episodes in a retrospective fashion, split up by weeks in which the episodes aired. In the future, I might revisit some events and discuss them in more depth, but for now, I'm just gonna express my primary thoughts on the episodes. So let's begin with the first week of the Summer of Steven. While Steven Floats released in another region far earlier than in the United States, for us US viewers, it was the start to the Summer of Steven, and I really liked this episode. It felt a lot like a return to form in many ways. After having so many plot-heavy episodes all at once, it evoked the feel of early Season 1 episodes where Steven is dealing with random hijinks relating to his powers. It's also always nice to see Steven's powers continuing to grow and expand, though the pace at which this is happening is pretty breakneck relative to the show as a whole. Though I really dig how this continues in later episodes during the Summer Steven and actually becomes part of the backbone to Amethyst's arc. It also makes sense given Steven's age that he should start mentally and physically maturing faster and tapping into his latent potential. Plus, he is now far more aware of and has internalized the burdens he has to carry to protect the planet, meaning he has more of a driving force to become stronger, even if his powers do still manifest rather haphazardly. I say this episode felt like the early ones, but I'm actually of the opinion that early Steven Universe episodes are relatively weak. However, Steven Floats felt really refined and well-crafted in comparison. Steven Floats gave this impression that the Crewniverse took the core of the Season 1 episodes, both in terms of story structure and the emotional bonding and growth within the team unit, and applied everything they've learned after having had worked on 83 episodes up to this point to make for a far more enjoyable and entertaining experience. Well-crafted is my go-to word to describe this episode because despite everything being pretty basic when you break it down, it was such a delight to watch. We are all already well aware the Crystal Gems love each other and we've seen this love manifest many times, but despite that, the emotional impact the episode delivers remains super strong and really put a big smile on my face. Dropbeat Dad was an episode I wasn't too fond of because unlike Steven Floats, it lacked that magic touch. Basically, the episode was basic and predictable, yet also felt emotionally barren and cheap even. Yellowtail didn't even get any real focus on him because the plotline was so by the numbers that, of course, he's gonna help his son do what he loves at the end. Who didn't see that coming from a mile away? I also ended up with the impression that Yellowtail did what he did because his son got horridly played by Marty, so he wanted to cheer him up and save the big event Sour Cream was looking forward to oh so much. There's no real reason Yellowtail should have an actual change of heart about Sour Cream's long-term future career, since all that happened during the episode from Yellowtail's perspective is that he witnessed how horrible the music business can be. If anything, that should affirm Yellowtail's beliefs that the music business is not something Sour Cream should pursue. By the end, I didn't feel like the problematic aspects of the relationship were fleshed out or explored at all, despite the episode pretty much pretending that they were. As for Marty, his shtick takes up most of the episode, but I did not find his sleaziness particularly entertaining or captivating. Overall, despite there being some fun bits, the episode was subpar enough that Greg becoming rich at the end stole all the focus from the side characters the episode was supposed to be about. But yeah, I gotta admit, this scene was pretty funny though.
I've not even got our chaps!
Mr. Greg was really emotionally powerful. The manner in which it explored Pearl's lasting resentment towards Greg, even after Rose is gone, was handled really well, and the episode was visually interesting to boot. I honestly didn't care much for the setup though, which does take a bit of time before we get to that emotional core the episode packs.
Light summer breeze, don't cost nothing.
Stop sinning about how you don't particularly need the money and just donate it all to charities or start your own charitable organizations for fuck's sake. But let's get on to the heart of the episode. We already knew Pearl's distaste for Greg exists because she wanted to share an intimate relationship with Rose in his place, but it's still very powerful and captivating to see Pearl's resentment manifest yet again. Those sorts of deep, visceral feelings are very fascinating to watch, and her coming to terms and bonding with Greg over their memories of Rose was also handled superbly. I'm sure Pearl will still have some feelings of resentment persist, but they won't hold as much power over her as they used to. One thing I found particularly interesting is that Pearl still feels Rose chose Greg over her. It seems like Pearl hasn't realized the very real possibility that she would have never had a relationship as intimate as she desired with Rose even if Greg never showed up. I love that because it means in an episode about acceptance, forgiveness, and bonding, other related flaws are still being concurrently fleshed out and allowed to remain in a character. That's awesome. Mr. Greg was a great episode, though as I already said, it took its time to get to the events that hooked me. Too Short to Ride finally has Peridot go out into Beach City and interact with some of its denizens. Well, mostly just one denizen in particular. This episode didn't really resonate with me as much as other episodes that contained Peridot hijinks. By the end, it just felt a tad underwhelming. Nothing was necessarily wrong with the episode, I'd still call it pretty decent. It's just overall the experience felt a tad on the lackluster side for a variety of reasons. We did get really interesting information about how Homeworld itself is diminished in resources and is now creating gems that, crudely described, are essentially less than optimal for their intended roles. And most importantly in this episode, Peridot discovers she's got Magneto powers, which is pretty dang cool, which I'm guessing no other Era 2 Peridots have ever attained before because they rely on limb enhancements for everything and just haven't really had to try. Prior to this discovery, Amethyst, while having good intentions, at least initially,
"We like you,"
performed a really shitty action which she was not called out on by either Peridot or Steven, perhaps because the excitement of Peridot discovering her powers distracted from that. I guess that just continues the trend of Amethyst performing highly questionable actions that often remain unaddressed. That's not a criticism or anything, but it is interesting to take note of and remember, I think. So I just mentioned that in the previous episode, Amethyst acted poorly without other characters discussing that with her. Well, the new Lars has Steven completely shutting down Lars's bodily autonomy and asserting his control over Lars by altering his relationship with others. Doesn't matter how they were altered, the mere fact that they were is highly problematic. I personally find this really fucked up. Steven felt bad about it, sure, but even that was primarily just because his actions began to royally screw the dynamic between Lars and Sadie, rather than him feeling bad because he realized how horrible of a thing it is to take control of somebody. Steven basically violated Lars. Don't get me wrong, I am really happy Steven has flaws that allow him to take horrible actions like these. But I do feel like Steven should have been reprimanded more toward the end of the episode in some way for this particular case. At the very least, Sadie should have chewed him out far more for what he did, or developed some slight disdain for him that wasn't there before. Instead, she actually defends Steven.
"Steven really didn't mean to."
You!
By the episode's end, I didn't get the impression that Steven fully understood that what he did would be terrible even if he didn't screw anything up in Lars's life. Although since this is a retrospective review, I did appreciate how later in Kiki's pizza delivery service, Steven was really sorry and upset that he invaded Kiki's dreams. That was cool. But hey, other than this very minor gripe, and the ending scene feeling a little on the ham-fisted side, the scene should have been handled in a more subtle manner in my opinion, this episode was awesome! I really love the manner in which the relationship between Lars and Sadie was explored. Due to their complicated history, it's atypical and highly interesting to watch. And I love that Steven, being on the simple and naive side when it comes to romance, can't even begin to understand it. We finally see Stevani again in Beach City Drift, and the plotline from the last time Steven and Connie fused and found themselves objectified for the first time, among other new experiences, is directly continued. Although this continuation is nowhere near as powerful and fascinating as the prior events leading up to it, that's mainly because the episode Alone Together was really amazing. I love that episode. It's probably one of my personal favorites due to the scope of what it explores and how well it does it. Beach City Drift was quite a bit simpler in premise, although it was still a whole lot of fun with awesome execution. Honestly, the racing was way more entertaining than I ever anticipated it to be. To boot, this episode packed that good ol' emotional connection we're used to SU providing by now.
"Steven, he's the reason we fused."
That was a really wonderful scene, and the takeaway message at the end was also great, although Kevin acted a tad too goofy in the ending scene for my tastes. But yeah, this was a really solid and fun episode. That concludes my condensed thoughts on the episodes aired during the first week of the Summer of Steven. Next up, I'll tackle the second week in the same format as you saw here. Thanks for watching, and I hope you tune in as I desperately attempt to catch up on the many episodes I am behind on.